In this video, I'm going to talk about computed properties, which will help keep your templates cleaner in addition to allowing you to set up more sophisticated relationships between data properties. I'm looking at computed.html, which you can find in the exercise files in the Chapter 2 Video 2 Start folder. We've seen how we can declare initial properties in data and use them in expressions in our templates, but it's not possible to refer to other data properties from within this initial data object itself. For instance, to create a full name property out of first name and last name. So this won't work because neither the data object nor the view instance have been created yet. And this refers to either the global window object here or undefined if we're in strict mode. Not being able to declare a full name property isn't such a big deal, but what if we had something that required a bit more computation? Like a temperature that we wanted to convert from Fahrenheit to Celsius. So we might try to put something like this in our template. So here's the formula for converting Fahrenheit to Celsius, and we may even want to wrap a math.round function around it. So soon our template becomes a little harder to read. To make this a little more interesting, let's add a text input with two-way binding that will allow us to edit the Fahrenheit value. When working with numbers, it's always a good idea to take advantage of the number modifier so we don't have to worry about casting to a number before calculating, even if it seems like the implicit casting in JavaScript will work for us. And I'm just going to comment out first name and last name. So we can see that this is working fine if I just type in some values whose corresponding Celsius temperatures I know. Like 32 is the freezing point of water in Fahrenheit, 212 is the boiling point, or 100 in Celsius, and I also happen to know that negative 40 is the same on both scales. And again, if you don't want to see those intermediate values when you type, especially that one, just add the lazy modifier here after the number modifier, and then it will wait until you tab away from that field before calculating. But I would be able to remove all of this logic from my template, which I'll do now with Control X because I'm going to reuse it, and I could replace it with a property called temp Celsius, a property that was managed by my view instance. And that's what computed properties allow me to do. So computed is going to be a new property in the constructor object here that will be an object itself, and I'll create a key called temp Celsius, but instead of an initial value, this will be a function that will return the temperature in Celsius. And it can be based on the values of other members of my view instance, namely temp Fahrenheit in data. So I'm going to paste this logic here after return, and the only change I have to make is to make sure I'm referring to temp Fahrenheit as this.temp Fahrenheit, because I'm referencing it from within the view instance now and not the template. So now let's refresh and make sure we get the same result. Since all we really did is create a function, you may be wondering if we can't just create a method like before and call the method from within the template. You can certainly do that, and I'll demonstrate it by adding this function to the methods property, and we'll want to give it a different name, so we'll add func to the end, and then we could just call it from within the template, like that. But there's one important advantage to using a computed property. If I were to log a message to the console to indicate that code is being executed in each function, and I switch it back to using the computed property, when I refresh and open up the console, you can see that message is logged for the computed property when I load the page. However, if I ask for the computed property again with vm.tempCelsius, it gives it to me without entering the function again, because Vue is smart enough to know that the temp Fahrenheit dependency hasn't changed and there's no need to recalculate. So it's actually cached. If I change the temp Fahrenheit value, then you will see it recalculate. On the other hand, every time I call the function temp Celsius func, it's going to do that calculation. And that means every time my template is re-rendered, it's going to need to call the function, which could potentially be a lot more wasteful in other scenarios. That should serve as a good introduction to computed properties, which allow us to move calculations out of our template and into our Vue instance without the additional overhead of a method call on a re-render.